Welcome back to the Barrel Talk Podcast. We are back with another episode of Let's Talk About It. And today we are going to be going in a deep dive talking about the Dallas Mavericks and what I feel like their expectations are, their X factors, and one question I do have for them this upcoming season. But let's get into kind of what they have done this past year. Obviously coming off of a finals appearance, beating the Oklahoma City Thunder in the second round, beating the Minnesota Timberwolves in the conference finals, beating the Clippers in the first round. A very impressive playoff run. I feel like the matchups against the Boston Celtics kind of hurt them. I feel like the Boston Celtics are made to compete and perform well against teams with two high caliber guards like a Luka Doncic and a Kyrie Irving. So I feel like the Dallas Mavericks season kind of ended in terms of just bad matchups. Obviously the Celtics were just better, but like the matchup really kind of hurt them. I feel like a team like the Minnesota Timberwolves might have had a better series and outing than the Dallas Mavericks did against the Boston Celtics because of just their size and ability to put pressure on the rim is better than Dallas. But tough matchup. You still get to the finals. I think it was a very, very successful year for the Dallas Mavericks. And when you think of what they've been going through the past couple of years, getting to the NBA Finals is really, really impressive, especially in a loaded Western Conference. Going into their offseason moves, Klay Thompson, obviously. Quentin Grimes in a trade, and Najee Marshall is obviously a very low-key pickup, especially for what they lost. They lost Derrick Jones Jr., Tim Hardaway was gone in a trade, and for a team that I looked at has kind of really being handcuffed in a way because I didn't really know the avenues they had to making certain moves, but you get enough money to bring in a Klay Thompson. I think Quentin Grimes is going to be an upgrade just all around compared to Tim Hardaway Jr., and you're adding Najee Marshall, who is a great defender to have just off your bench that can guard multiple positions, be able to switch really well, and be a nice catch and spot up shooter for Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. So looking at this team, I feel like the pieces that they got rid of and the guys that replaced those pieces are just better. I think Klay Thompson is going to be huge. It's going to be interesting to see him in a new situation. But I feel like he's at a point in his career where he might be able to benefit from not having to be so much movement off the ball because he is an older player. He has had his injuries, especially with the Achilles and the ACL. So looking at that, being able to have Kyrie and Luka to have the ability to be able to just purely spot up, because when you compared the offense of the Dallas Mavericks to the Golden State Warriors, the Golden State Warriors are more heavy on off-ball movement. Maybe Klay Thompson switching teams is going to be able to be better just suited just catching and shooting. I feel like that's the whole part of Klay Thompson's game that is never going to fade. And I think playing next to a Luka Doncic that is going to get him so many wide open threes is going to be huge. And I feel like this creating space is what Klay Thompson has really struggled with since the injuries have kind of piled up on him and he's just gotten older. Love Quentin Grimes and Najee Marshall as roles off the bench, replacing Josh Green and Tim Hardaway. Tim Hardaway is very up and down. I like him as just a shooter, but he's very, very up and down. I think Quentin Grimes can just offer you more like defensively. Same with Najee Marshall. Looking at potential starting five, I think it's going to be a little bit different. I think you go Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, PJ Washington, and Derek Lively. I think Derek Lively gets the nod to start this upcoming season. Even if it's not at the start, I do think he ends up starting at some point, and you have Daniel Gafford off the bench, which either or, I think they're kind of interchangeable. I think Lively is better at that in-between game when they would go to the pick and roll and then they would hit Lively on the roll, and he's kind of at that free throw line extended area. He's able to make plays better than Daniel Gafford, but I think Daniel Gafford still plays above the rim better. I think he's just more polished as an NBA center than Derek Lively, but I think Derek Lively's decision-making and his ability to just protect the rim like Gafford, I feel like they still have a nice 1-2 punch depending on what team they're playing to go at that center position, which is very, very nice to have. PJ Washington, I feel like he was phenomenal, especially in the playoff run until the finals. Klay Thompson, obviously he's going to provide them just spacing in general. Looking at this team defensively, I think they're still going to be fine. Even without a Derrick Jones Jr., who was great for them defensively, I think the pure offensive talent of this team could take another leap with Klay Thompson and just having Klay Thompson. I feel like I feel like the narrative around Klay Thompson has kind of made and undervalued kind of this pickup for the Dallas Mavericks. Like, Klay Thompson is now in a role where they're not asking Klay Thompson to give them 20-25 a night. They're asking Klay Thompson just to play his role. This is in Golden State, where you're looked at to be the number 2 to Steph Curry, when you're probably not that at that point in your career. We need you to come in and be able to shoot the ball at a high clip, give us a good, solid to good defense, and just play your role. You don't need the ball in your hands crazy like you did at Golden State at times because of how the roster was looking. So you're just looking to play off of Luka and Kyrie. You already have PJ Washington, who's another great spacing piece as well from that corner. Now you have another shooter like Klay Thompson, other than Derrick Jones Jr. now. So now the spacing, the whole court's going to open up. The entirety of the court's going to open up. It's going to be very interesting to see. Now you're looking at this bench. Now you have Jaden Hardy. You still have Maxi Kleber. Now you have Quentin Grimes. You have Najee Marshall. So now you added some more depth pieces that are more suitable for the roster in terms of just better shooting, better defenders, and better spacing. So it's going to be very interesting to see what this Dallas Mavericks team and the lineups that they could go with. So this starting five that I have is kind of the best one that I kind of put together. It's like, it's all real matchup based. Like, you could go Gafford, like, depending on who you're playing, depending on what the situation is with Klay Thompson and how he's playing. Like, do you go like Najee Marshall? Like, where does Quentin Grimes get his minutes? Like, Jaden Hardy, I still feel like has a lot of upside and potential. Like, where does he get his minutes and stuff like that? But I think it's going to be a very, very good year for the Dallas Mavericks. In terms of expectations, I expect this team to be able to make the finals again. I really do. I think on paper, with what I look at, I think they're the best team in the West right now. On paper, I do. I really do. I still take them over OKC just because I feel like the tandem of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving and the size that, yes, the OKC Thunder added Isaiah Hartenstein, but I'm still thinking I'm going to lean the Dallas Mavericks just right now, and it's a 1A, 1B situation out West. I think these are going to be the top two teams going into the season, and I'm not going to be surprised if they're still the top two teams at the end of the season. So looking at this, the expectation I have is when you have this team and they're healthy with the additions they made, I'm not shocked if they're still in the conference finals, knocking on the door to go to the finals again in back-to-back seasons if this team is healthy. In terms of the main question I have for the Dallas Mavericks, how much impact will Klay Thompson have on his new team? I think that's kind of the big overlying question because he's been with the Golden State Warriors his whole career. What does the fit look like in Dallas in terms of the whole play styles? Like I said, are completely different. Gonna be interesting to see, like, do they make sure Klay Thompson is getting sets where he's moving without the ball and everything else. So, like, comparing it to a Golden State Warriors offense is completely different. But in terms of fitting pieces around Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, it makes sense to have Klay Thompson start next to PJ Washington at that 3-4, and then you have Lively and Gafford interchanging at that 5, and then you have better depth and role pieces off your bench to make this team bolster up on both sides of the ball. So looking at the expectations, like I said, I think they could be knocking on the door to go back to the finals. As of right now, I think they're the best team in the Western Conference. Still, going into this year, I think they made all the right moves this offseason to bolster their roster up and kind of tweak and kind of clean up some of those weaknesses that we have seen last year throughout that playoff run at times for this team. But it kind of comes down to Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving staying healthy. They both stay healthy. I think this team is caliber enough to make it back to the finals. Like I said, main question I had, like I said, just touching back on it, Klay Thompson, how's that impact going to be on this new team? Let me know down in the comments. But that's all I have for the Dallas Mavericks and this kind of deep dive going into this upcoming season. Thank you guys for tuning into the Barrel Talk podcast. Hope you tune in to future episodes.